Hi, and welcome to the final part of the Marketing Foundation's webinar series for law firms. This week, we are going to show you how to attract quality referrals and reviews. We've got Paul Evans, who is the CEO of Pillar and Scroll. He's going to be presenting the majority of the content today. And Jessica Lupton from Clio. So she's going to jump in and tell you a little bit about Clio software. A bit of housekeeping. I'm going to be in the background. My name's Matt Wilkinson from Pillar and Scroll. So if you've got any issues, just use the chat or the Q&A. Let's check if the chat's working. Sometimes need to enable something there. But yeah, I'll be there to help out. The session is being recorded. We'll send that out by email afterwards. And we really want feedback through the session, so feel free to ask any questions again. You can use the QA or in the chat. We don't mind. I'll probably save those till the end. Yeah, but look, I won't take up any more of your time. I'm going to hand it over to Paul, who's going to present today's session.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, so like the other sessions, I thought I'd give a very quick recap, but I'm going to do a more detailed one at the end of this to sort of show you how everything that we've covered over the last 3 weeks hangs together. So in the last two sessions, we talked about this character, Rosie, who's a very competent lawyer and she's not getting as much work as she'd like, but she knows that there's plenty out there. She knows that growth is going to require some effort, but she also knows there's an easy way to do it now and a hard way to do it. And the strategy that I proposed in week one takes into consideration really like how people actually choose a new lawyer, and that's that they seek a referral or referrals to the lawyer. They then go online and do their own research, looking for evidence that this person can help them and to see if they're a right fit. From there, they reach out for an initial conversation. When someone reaches out, the large majority are already prepared to engage that lawyer. So today's looking at the first part of this strategy, and that's referrals. And a lot of people think of referrals as a passive strategy, kind of like if they just do good work, then the referrals are going to happen. And to a degree, that is true, and they will happen naturally. But what we're talking about today isn't to replace those type of referrals, but it's a way of adding scale, like so adding quality and quantity to getting more referrals. And the strategies we're going to talk about today are about how do you scale those referrals. And the problem with the first type of those sort of just referrals that happen naturally, so if it's from existing clients or family and friends or other colleagues, is that they're left a bit to chance. So the circumstances where clients or family, friends, whatever, have the opportunity to make a referral to a lawyer is often random. And whilst under no sort of situation can we control any kind of referral, whether it's the ones we're going to talk about today or the sort of more organic ones, there are certain things that we can do to ensure that we're referred when the right opportunities arise. And so that's what today's going to be about. The actions that we're going to talk about are how do we make referrals a proactive strategy? And I'll reiterate it, like without question, the largest source of work for the overwhelming majority of the most successful lawyers is referrals. And so when we approach this thoughtfully, they can really help grow your practice without wasting a lot of time, a lot of money on some more sort of really low ROI marketing activities. So let's get into it. So part one is about identifying who the best referral partners are. So who are the people who can send you work on a consistent basis to help you achieve those growth goals? So in the past two sessions, I've talked about this character as well, Alan. And Alan wants to sell his food manufacturing business so that he can have a really good retirement. He's had enough. And if you recall, Alan, in that story, Alan got an email from, in this instance, a private equity firm saying, we'd like to talk about acquiring your business. Now, I won't cover the whole story, but what's important in that story is that something happened. So someone in this instance said, I want to buy your business. And it's that email that triggered Alan to call his accountant and ask for a referral to a lawyer. There's no world that I'm aware of where Alan, or any prospective client for that matter, wakes up in the morning and just for fun decides that they want to engage a lawyer. I'm yet to come across a situation where that's true. So something happens, and we call that a trigger. And a trigger is what causes someone to take action. So it's not a vague pain point. It's not, I'd like to sell my business one day. I need a lawyer. No, something actually has to happen usually for people to take action. So we can put triggers into two buckets, external triggers and internal triggers. And the first one we're going to look at is external triggers. And they're where an event or a decision or an action is imposed by someone else onto the prospective client in this instance. So it's that effect that causes the other party, causes the prospect in this instance to take some sort of action. And in some cases, that's going to be against their will. So here's some examples of triggers that are imposed by others. So a claim made, like being sued, a contract breach, a payment dispute, could be having to respond to something from the family. So, for example, a spouse wants to leave you, or the sibling decides that they want to contest their will. I think these next two, these around compliance and governments, can be some of like the most effective triggers. And in Australia, this year, a lot of law firms are going to be subject to the AML laws as a pretty good example of like, there isn't a choice of compliance. It's you have to comply. And so what I'm trying to say here is have a think about in your own practice, what are the triggers that your clients have that are imposed by others that will make them take action and ask someone for a referral? The other types of triggers are choices. So they're more like internally driven. It's usually like a decision in this instance, like an internal decision. And the first sort of type in this category is people that are like trying to improve something or grow something. So, for example, the client might be choosing to start a business, and that's a decision that they're making, or raise some money, or to use the example from the last one, the counter of it would be they decide to leave their spouse. Whatever it is, it's usually doing something to improve their situation. The second category in this is preventative. And there's a lot of examples of this. So really, this is about reducing risk or protecting against something negative happening. So examples of that might be preparing a contract. So you're trying to prevent things in the future becoming a problem. Organizing a will, a prenup. There's nothing wrong with these triggers, and there's countless examples of these kinds of triggers being effective for lawyers. But in my experience, I'd say the most like impactful ones are often the triggers that are imposed by others. They're the most potent. Now, why does this matter? So why am I even talking about these triggers? What's this got to do with referrals? What's the actual, like, for you as a lawyer, what's the value of understanding the triggers that your clients face? Like, that's going to get them to take action. Why does this matter? And I think the answer's in this sentence. When insert a specific trigger, so when a specific trigger happens, our ideal clients ask someone for something. So we need to fill in these gaps. And the default is when a specific trigger happens, our ideal clients ask their existing lawyer. for help. So that's the default. Most people, when they get that email, that thing happens, that trigger happens, or they decide they're going to grow, prevent an issue from happening, they'll go to their existing lawyer for help. We know this is their default. In so many circumstances, that isn't the case. There isn't a default. So we need to look at when the specific traps our ideal clients ask, and it's in bold, someone for a recommendation to a lawyer. It's this someone that matters. So who? Who is that someone? Who's that someone in your practice? So some examples, and this is a really actual, like, believe it or not, really sort of short version of who it could be. There are so many other professionals that have the ideal clients that you're looking for, that people go to first before reaching out to the lawyer. And the first one on the list is other lawyers. For a lot of practice areas in law, other lawyers can be the biggest source of referrers. So in the first couple of columns, I've identified just some examples of potential professionals that refer work to lawyers. And in that right-hand side, we've got not so much professionals, but organizations that are often sending work to lawyers as well. And again, this is just a really it's a brief sample of all the potential there. So if we tie this back to the goals that we set in the first section, we can then think about, well, how many relationships do we actually need? So how many relationships do we need to build with other lawyers or industry bodies or whatever it might be? And so this was the example I used in session one, where the person needs to add 25 clients a year to achieve their growth goal, if it sort of works out roughly like this. So if we think about, okay, for rounding, I'm going to go 24 because it's easily divisible by 12. So we need 24 new clients a year. So we need 2 new ones a month. If we were to go build, say, 10, 12, say 12 relationships with some accounting firms, can we expect that each of those accounting firms will send 2 clients a year, so one every 6 months? Is that realistic? There's no right or wrong way to do this. It's just about working out, well, how many relationships am I going to need? How many referral partnerships am I going to need to fill that gap? So if you're in a high quantity, like low value kind of thing, you probably need more that sort of organizational type of referral partner. Someone that's like a body that's going to be seeing this issue come time and time again. If it's on the sort of smaller side, like the one I said, like sort of you need about 24 new files a year, well then accounting firms or other lawyers or real estate agents, whatever it might be that's relevant to your practice, might do. What I find with a lot of lawyers is actually a much smaller number again. Can often be like 5. And they need maybe 3 to 5 new cases a year to be busy. And so that's going to help you adjust, well, how many referral relationships do I need? So part 2 is around how do we attract more referral partners? So if we look at, okay, we've identified who the referral partners are based on the triggers that happen. So how do we actually go and get more of them? And it's 2 ways, and they're both perfectly valid ways. The first is more like a content marketing approach. So putting yourself out there, social media, whether it might be speaking at events, whatever it might be, and hoping that they come to you, like doing all the right things. And it's a perfectly valid strategy. The strategy I find is often more effective, it's just because it's more direct, is outreach. And so with LinkedIn, with AI now, it's very easy to find and do the online research of, well, what other organizations have the clients that I want to get in front of? And then it's about making a direct approach. So it's as simple as, to start with, sending an email. So how do you actually make a direct approach? You use Google, you use AI to find the right partners, and then you contact them directly. But here's what I've found: a lot of lawyers make a mistake. They make a mistake around referral partnerships, and it's that they focus on just me, me, me. So I've seen many lawyers struggle with this, and this is not just around new referral relationships, but also existing ones. Is there's kind of like this, it's still about me getting the work. And when that happens, and I've seen people in referral relationships over this, it's like the question I ask them is, well, what are you doing to help them or to reciprocate in some way? And I usually get one or two answers. The first is uh, nothing. I just um, one day I asked them out for a coffee and I told them what I did, and now they sent me work and all is great. Okay. The second is far more common. It's, I get a lot of work from them. It's great. And I'd love to send work back to them, but the work doesn't flow that way. And that's often very true for lawyers. Often lawyers are towards like the end of, um, like they're there to solve a particular problem. They don't, they're not sort of, they're not usually referring work that way. It's like people come to the referrer, the work goes to the lawyer. But my problem with the work not flowing the other way is it feels like a bit of a cop out, because yes, it might be true. And it's fair that it's true, but the answer, like, is you still need to proactively do something. And I think that's really the case when initiating a new relationship. And I think this is where lawyers need to get creative, because they will be like, to get those referrals to start with, you need to basically go to those referrers with an offer. And I've got a few ideas now about like what you could do when you're reaching out to a potential referral partner on, so how are you going to provide value from the outset? And the first kind of category is around content. So this shouldn't be a huge surprise. So a lot of referrers need CPD, CLE, so doing content for them or for their network, so their clients, is a really valuable thing to offer in that sort of initial email. You could do guides with them, so written guides on how to handle an issue, whatever it might be. A very underrated one is templates. So most people love templates because it's like, okay, like someone asks them for something and now they have a template that they can just go out and fill. Cheat sheets is sort of a similar example to that. This content can then be repurposed into a million other things. So the whole point of this series has been how to attract new clients, but you can use that content with your existing clients, with other referral partners, in other ways to attract clients. For this very specific purpose, it's about how do you prepare content that's going to be valuable to those referrers. A second type of providing value to referrers is access. This is often overlooked, I find. This kind of category works really well with other professionals, so probably more so than, say, the organizations, other professionals, other lawyers, other accountants. And probably the easiest and most underrated tactic I've seen work time and time again with lawyers is by providing ad hoc, off the clock advice. So actually saying to the referrer, when you have a question or your client has a question, just give me a call. It's off the clock. They don't feel like they're going to get charged. They're not imposing. That is often the foundation for a lot of these referral partnerships. Secondly, introductions to your network. So you have clients, or you have staff, your colleagues, people in your network. Would they find value in being introduced to them? You could do that in a sort of like less direct way, and that would be to invite the referrers to your events, to speak at your events, or to add to your content. So getting in front of your audience again. And finally, it's a little bit more complex, and this is really a sort of a case by case basis, but could you provide legal support for their business? Not without pitching it, but that can come up. The final category is around support. And this is probably more for organizations. And again, this is where you need to be creative. But for a lot of associations, a lot of like groups, those people pay to be in part of those groups. And they're always looking for ways to give value for that payment. So is there something that you could offer to those organizations that would be of value to their members? There's, I'm sure, plenty of different things. The second one, and this can be quite a time suck, but can be incredibly effective, and that's volunteering. So offering your time on a board or on a committee for those organizations. I have seen this work like unbelievably well for a few lawyers. I used to work at a firm that got about a third of their revenue originated from just one of the partners. This is a 300-person firm. One of the partners being a board member on a committee for an industry group can work incredibly well. The last one is around advertising and sponsorship. Now, this can work, and obviously these can be quite expensive, but where I've seen these work really well is when they're paired with one of the other two things I mentioned before, whether it's volunteering or offers. When it's just writing a check, I've generally found that they don't work well at all. So just paying a few $1,000s to be a sponsor or to advertise without any involvement in that group or that organization is usually pretty ineffective. But pairing an offer, pairing some volunteering, and then actually offering advertising sponsorship can be a really, really strong way to sort of start and cement that relationship. So there's some ideas on how you might provide value to referrers, something you can put in that initial email when you're reaching out. I'd like to offer this, or I'd like to talk to you about an idea I have, is how you might approach that. The last thing about referrals is tracking them. And so in Clio, when you open up a new matter, it's very easy to be able to track them. And I thought I'd just share some of the best practices I've seen around how to track referrals. And the first is to track by category and by the individual or the organization. So the category might be accountants, or it might be other lawyers, or it might be an industry body. So you want to be able to categorize by, okay, who's sending us the most work? Is it associations? Is it lawyers? Is it accountants? And then you want to know, okay, which ones? Which ones? The next thing I think is a really underrated thing to do is to run a report. And you can run a report like this in Clio very simply, but it's to run this report monthly just to be able to go, thank you to the people that have referred your work. When everyone's busy, it's easy to forget that. So this is something I have just in my calendar. I've seen a lot of lawyers do this, just run a report at the end of the month, who referred work, and then just send a thank you email or a gift if it makes sense to. I also think there's a lot of benefit in running a full report every sort of 6 months or so, just to take a look at, okay, where is our work coming from? And as such, you can then adjust your budget accordingly. You might have thought accountants was that's the biggest source of work, but it isn't. So maybe we should, put it into something else. So just having a calendar item it's every 6 months, even every 12 months can be just an effective thing to do. Am I spending like my time in all the right places? So I wanted to finish today's session by just bringing everything that we've covered for the last 3 weeks just together. So in the first session, we talked about strategy, and we called this session fundamentals. And that session was all about how do you got to set a growth goal, and then using that real world strategy. So how people actually buy legal services to achieve that growth goal. Then the next two sessions, so last week and today, was really about the actions. So this is the plan. This is the plan for next year. The first session was about evidence. So how to use your website to convert referrals into conversations. The third session today was on referrals. So how to get the best referrals and attract more of them. So let's cover, I just want for each of the sessions, I want to cover the 3 key ideas and just 3 action items for you. So in session 1, I talked a lot about how do you set growth goals, and you have to set those goals before you define a strategy. If your growth goals are really, really modest, say I want to grow by 5%, we don't need to do too much. It's going to be a very different approach. But if it's I want to grow by 5 times, no amount of organic growth is going to get there. You probably need to look at things like mergers and stuff, which I quickly talked about. So set your growth goals before the strategy. Then you need to match your strategy with reality. And the reality is people always, like, it's 80 to 95% will go to someone they trust and ask for a referral when engaging a lawyer. They then go online to validate it and then reach out for a conversation. If we try to attract clients through other means, whether it's Google SEO or it's advertising from the just to all and sundry, it's trying to fit a square into a circle. It's not based on reality. So we need to match the strategy with reality. Finally, the other idea was that everyone wants certainty. So everyone wants that kind of assurance that this is going to be the right lawyer for the job. As I said it in both the last 2 weeks, is when someone engages a lawyer, it's like the most important thing going on in their life or their business at that time. So everyone's sort of looking for that certainty. So what are the things you can do to provide that sort of certainty to the right people? So the 3 action items from session 1 are write your goals. Identify what that dollar gap is, the number of clients that you need to fill that gap, and some sort of timeline. Describe your ideal clients and describe your ideal matters. So you need to have a sense of what am I actually trying to win here? What types of clients, what type of work do I actually want to win here? Because that's going to influence everything else. In session 2, the 3 key ideas were your profile page. So your profile page on the website is make or break. I mentioned the Pareto's principle, 80-20 rule. You get your profile page right, it counts for basically most of the online research that people are going to do. If you don't get that right, they move on. I also talked about, people often have, they'll know what's important to them when they're looking for a lawyer, but often they're unable to assess it. So they know that, okay, I want a lawyer with really strong technical skills, but have no way of actually assessing whether that lawyer does. So we want to prioritize the content on that profile with not only what's important, but what can people actually assess and understand. I then briefly talked about, okay, if they're happy, they read your profile, that makes sense. How do you seal the deal with that first contact? And Jess ran us through using scheduling tools and an intake form to really seal the deal with that first contact, to sort of showcase that professionalism right from the outset. And so the 3 action items from this session were identify those factors that are both important and accessible, then improve your profile with the supporting evidence. Often that evidence is going to include your experience. So the types of work that you actually do, not where you went to law school, not how long you've been in the profession, but what's the actual evidence? Like, what's the experience that you have? And then finally, write that initial email template. So I shared a sort of a structured email template. Feel free to use that as a guide. Um, when someone reaches out for that initial conversation, do you have something that you can quickly go back to them that is going to help make that first conversation really valuable for them? And finally, session 3 today. So the 3 key ideas from today were that triggers drive referrals, not vague pain points. Something has to happen. The best ones are, I think, when someone else enforces a decision, but that's been my experience. Both can work quite well. Referral partners are the thing that will unlock scalable growth. So referrals will always come from happy clients, family and friends, and so forth, but they're very hard to scale. Building relationships with referral partners is what will scale growth. And finally, I think really important advice is to start those partnerships by giving them something. So starting with an offer, there's content. We talked about support. We talked about access. Don't just reach out to someone and say, can we have a coffee? It's like, how do you start something by giving? And so the 3 action items are identify those most potent triggers, then identify all the best partners and the volume that you'll need to reach your growth goals. And finally, it's about preparing that offer and then reaching out to those potential referral partners. That's it for me today. I'll quickly hand you over to Jess and Matt.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks for highlighting some of the features where you can track referrals in Clio Grow. So if any of you joining are interested in learning more about Clio Grow, feel free to reach out to me direct. My email's here, and Matt probably put it in the chat as well. But as mentioned in previous weeks, we have got a special offer on certain plans at the moment, running until the 31st of December. So yeah, reach out to me if you want to know more. Thanks.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Paul. So just a little bit about Pillar and Scroll, and then happy to take questions if you want to use the chat or Q&A. We're a marketing agency for law firms. Over a decade of experience working with some of the leading firms in Australia and New Zealand. Before that, Paul and the team have had a lot of experience in-house in leading firms in Australia. So if you're looking to up your website or your marketing game in 2026, we'd love to chat. I'm going to drop our links into the chat as well. You can book a meeting there or just drop Paul an email and he will get back to you. Yeah, like I say, ask any questions via the chat or Q&A. I've got one here that came in, Paul, which is, who are the referral partners for litigators?
Yeah, that question comes up quite a bit, actually. I think I talk about referrals, like sort of driving 80 to 95% of new work for lawyers. It tends to be really, really high for litigators. I mean, it does depend on the type of litigation. Okay, so I've seen two things here. One, I've seen commercial litigators partnering with industry associations can work quite well. And with that in mind, they're not often promoting, say, they're not really going in as the litigator, they're going in as like a commercial firm, and litigation's part of that suite. So I used to work with a lawyer who did that for the automotive industry, that commercial litigator, and it's a tricky service to sell. So he went in with like really all the front end, like the risk and prevention type things, but around the specific industry. And so he built relationships with these industry bodies. And the way the firm was set up was, well, he got credit for any of the work that came in. It didn't just have to be litigation. So he got all the credit for the commercial work. And that's what he actually ended up picking up. And the commercial litigation work just flowed. That worked really well. But I'd say the more common one is other lawyers. So if it's commercial litigation, it's usually commercial lawyers. And so my advice for smaller practices that say do commercial litigation is not to offer. Like contrary to what I originally said, it's not to offer commercial services because it actually it harms your referral chances. People don't want to refer if you do both. So I think building relationships with commercial firms that only do that front end work is a really obvious one. If it's other types of disputes like family law, crime, I think the industry, like CLCs, sort of like groups, I think can be quite helpful. So it might even be psychologists for family law, or marriage counselors. But it's some of the best law firms I've seen, at least here in Australia, that get this right is they actually make the commercial firms their referral partners as well. And the logic is they often want high value cases. So who has high value? Well, usually people that work in big corporates or run their own business, and they have commercial lawyers that often don't do family law, crime, personal injury. So often they can be a huge source of work as well. I hope that answers the question.
No, that's good. It's really good. That's really good. We don't have any more questions. So gonna wrap up, give everyone a couple of minutes back of their day. Look, thanks everyone for coming to this. If you're watching recording, thanks as well. Thank you, Paul and Jess. It's been a really good series. We'll send out the recording and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.